Hey, Focus Learners, welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're completely dismantling the single biggest myth out there about building wealth. You know the one, the idea that you have to hit six figures or become a millionaire before you're actually rich. Well, it turns out it's not about those massive milestones at all. It's actually about a much, much smaller number. So let's dive into the fascinating psychology of wealth building and the absolute magic of the $20,000 threshold.
Let's just get right to it and shatter this massive illusion right off the bat. We'll call it the $1 million myth. Pretty much every financial guru out there is going to tell you that you need $1 million in the bank to finally feel wealthy, or that scoring a six-figure salary is your magic ticket to freedom. But honestly, the reality is vastly different. $20,000 is the actual mathematical and psychological threshold where your entire relationship with money completely flips. The moment you hit this specific number, all those invisible barriers just break down, and the rules of the wealth building game change entirely. To really wrap our heads around how this works, I want you to picture pushing a massive, incredibly heavy boulder up a really steep hill. Getting that thing started is just agonizing, right? You're straining, you're sweating, you're making barely any progress, and you're probably wondering if you're ever going to reach the top. Well, that is exactly what building wealth feels like before you hit that $20,000 mark. You are literally pushing uphill against financial gravity. But crossing that invisible 20K barrier, that is the exact moment your boulder finally crests the hill. Suddenly, gravity isn't fighting you anymore. It actually starts working in your favor, and that massive boulder just starts rolling down the other side almost effortlessly. But why does cresting that hill feel so absolutely incredible? Well, to understand that, we have to look at the before 20K paradigm. When you're operating with zero savings, your brain is locked into what psychologists call survival mode. And survival mode is basically a state where every single financial decision you make is filtered through fear and scarcity. Your mental bandwidth is completely hijacked by immediate short-term threats. It's literally like trying to plan a relaxing beach vacation while your house is actively on fire. Because of this panic, you might take a really terrible job offer just because you desperately need the paycheck. Or you might stay in a toxic living situation because moving feels way too risky. In survival mode, you are practically blinded to real growth and opportunity. And hey, the data completely backs up this psychological shift. Vanguard did some fascinating research on financial well-being, and they found that simply saving your first $2,000, which, let's be real, is less than a high-end laptop, boosts your overall well-being by a massive 21%. That little buffer pulls you right out of immediate panic. But when you push that emergency fund to cover 3 to 6 months of living expenses, which for most people lands right around that $20,000 mark, you get an additional 13% boost in well-being. That right there is the critical leap. That is the exact moment your brain finally shifts gears from just trying to survive and preserve what little you have to actually building long-term wealth. And this is where we get into the beautiful math of momentum. Let's say you're saving $1,000 a month and getting an 8% return. Getting to that very first $20,000 takes about 19 agonizing months of sheer brutal discipline. But check out the next phase. Your second $20,000 doesn't take 19 months, it only takes 17. You put in the exact same amount of work, but you just shaved 2 full months off your timeline. Why? Compound interest. And if you fast forward to when you've got a $400,000 portfolio, generating that exact same 20 grand only takes 5 months, and it happens almost automatically with zero extra effort on your part. Every single milestone just gets progressively easier. Let's just pause for a second, because we need to kill another myth right now. There is no secret billionaire hedge fund driving this phenomenon for the ultra-rich. It's just basic, beautiful math. Look, if you have $20,000 sitting in investments earning an 8% annual return, that equals $1,600 of pure passive income. That is $1,600 flowing directly into your account over a year without you having to lift a single finger. Well, except maybe to hit refresh on your banking app. It's literally money that shows up just because your existing money was out there working on your behalf. But here's the crucial takeaway. Accumulating this initial $20,000 isn't really just about having a chunk of money sitting in the bank. It is a fundamental, ground-up rewiring of your identity. Because to get there, you had to master 3 really tough steps. You had to track every single dollar, you had to learn how to delay gratification, and you had to execute on that plan consistently, month after month, maybe even year after year. By doing all of that, you prove to yourself that you can control your finances rather than letting your finances dictate your life. And honestly, that isn't just a financial skill. That is a profound life skill that alters every decision you make going forward. And when you take this new identity out into the real world, the contrast is just wild. Think about it. If you're living paycheck to paycheck and your car's alternator dies, that is a total disaster that completely derails your entire month. But
With a $20,000 foundation, it's just a minor annoyance. You pay the mechanic and move on. More importantly, when a smart friend starts a new business or a really great career conference pops up in another city, the old you had to completely ignore it or just automatically say, I can't afford it. But the new you actually have the mental space and the capital to investigate the ROI and weigh the potential returns. You start seeing options everywhere instead of just seeing threats. Which brings us to a really fascinating shift in how you actually handle your budget. Crossing this threshold completely liberates you from the exhausting mental gymnastics of micro decisions. When you're broke, you agonize over buying the generic brand cereal or whether you should spend $3 on a coffee. But here's the reality. Even if you mercilessly cut out every single coffee run for a year, you might save, what, $1,000? It's not going to make or break you. Once you have that foundation, you realize your mental bandwidth is way better spent on the macro decisions. Where you live, what you drive, how you invest. These are the massive choices that actually swing your net worth by tens of thousands of dollars over time. And this newly freed up mental bandwidth doesn't just change how you spend. It builds incredible, undeniable power in your career. Hitting this milestone gives you what we like to call walking away money. This is the ultimate form of financial leverage. It basically means you are no longer trapped in a terrible, toxic job out of pure desperation. You could literally quit tomorrow and survive for months without a paycheck. So suddenly, you are no longer negotiating from a position of weakness. You are negotiating from a position of immense strength. You want to know the absolute best part about all this? The real secret? You probably won't even need to spend a dime of that walking away money for it to work. Just knowing that cash is sitting right there in your bank account creates this incredible career feedback loop. Because you aren't terrified of being fired into poverty, you start asking for raises fearlessly. You push back on unreasonable demands from your boss. This naturally gives you this aura of quiet confidence and assertiveness at work. And ironically enough, when you show up with that kind of confidence, people really notice. You start getting the better assignments, you get more respect, and ultimately, you earn a lot more money. It's a positive feedback loop that just accelerates your wealth building even further. Okay, we've got to address the elephant in the room here. What do you think is the single most dangerous trap people fall into right after hitting that $20,000 mark? Take a second, think about it. Got it? Well, it happens all the time. People hit this milestone, they feel that incredible psychological relief, and then they immediately blow it on a reward. They splurge on a super expensive vacation they feel they've earned, or worse, they use it as a massive down payment on a flashy car they can't actually afford. Listen to me, this $20,000 is not a reward for good behavior. It is the absolutely vital foundation for your entire financial future. And speaking of cars, let me drop a truly shocking number on you. $400,000. That is the estimated lifetime cost for the average person's vehicles. When you add up the massive car payments, the full coverage insurance, the constant maintenance, and the gas, most people are dropping $600 to $800 every single month just to get from point A to point B over a 40-year working life. Honestly, it is absolutely absurd to actively destroy your wealth on depreciating assets like that while simultaneously complaining that you'll never be able to afford retirement. Let's do a direct comparison here to put this into perspective. The very second you drive a $30,000 brand new car off the dealer lot, it loses about 20% of its value. Just boom, gone. You are literally watching your hard-earned money evaporate into thin air. But if you took that exact same $30,000 and invested it, it could easily grow to over $200,000 in an investment account over 20 years. When you finally cross that $20,000 savings threshold, you start seeing the massive opportunity cost of every purchase you make. Suddenly, keeping that older, reliable Honda doesn't feel like a sacrifice at all, right? It feels like a brilliant strategic choice that's directly funding your future freedom. So that really brings us to the absolute core of today's explainer, and it's perfectly summed up in this idea. It's the difference between surviving and thriving, between reacting to life and designing it. Look, hitting $20,000 isn't going to make you crazy rich overnight, we know that, but it will fundamentally, permanently upgrade how you approach every single opportunity in your life from this day forward. So my final question to you, the focused learner, is this. What strategic choice are you going to make today so that your future self can thank you? Because the foundation for your true generational wealth, it starts with the very next decision you make. Thanks so much for hanging out with me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.